Hello, Disney fans! I knew when I started this channel that being a reviewer means you're gonna have to review movies and occasionally books. I will be reviewing a few Disney books, but occasionally, as a reviewer, we have to review stories that are terrible. Goes along with being a reviewer. Well, today I'm going to be reviewing what is pretty much universally regarded as the worst movie Disney ever made. I don't even probably have to say the name. You probably already know I'm going to be talking about the Black Cauldron. Well, I wondered when I went into this, does this movie deserve its horrible reputation? Spoiler alert, yes. And what made this movie so bad? Well, going into it, I thought, well, let's give it a fair chance because I knew that it was based on the first two books of the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. Now, basing a movie on one book, you gotta cut out a lot. Basing a movie on an entire series, or even just the first two books of a series, like in this case, you're not gonna be able to tell that story. Well, I've read the books, and my opinion on them is they're good, but they're not Lord of the Rings type of league. In fact, it seems to me like they're trying to be Lord of the Rings, and they aren't. But, you can't even compare the books to the movies because no, they didn't condense the first two books. When they made this movie, what they did is they looked at the first two books. Oh, I'll take an element from this story, I'll take an element from that story, and we'll go back and forth picking elements between the two, put them in a blender, and see what comes out. So there is no plot comparison. The plot itself is different enough that yeah, I'm going to be bringing up stuff from the books when I talk about this, but I'm not going to be doing a plot point per plot point comparison. You can't. They're just too different. It's apples and oranges. So, other than condensing too much story into one movie, what else went wrong? Well, when they started to make this, that was the time when Don Bluth left Disney and took half of the Disney animators with him. Can't say I blame him the way things were going with Disney at the time. And if you grew up in the 80s, you know the king of animation during the 80s was not Walt Disney. Don Bluth ruled the 80s when it came to animated movies. You look at The Land Before Time, Secret of Nim, An American Tail. Those are the animated movies from the 80s that you're going to probably remember. So that was a major setback for the Black Cauldron. And it delayed the process of making it enough where, of course, there were huge budget setbacks. If you've got a movie you got to make, you want to get it out by a deadline. Having to hire new people, having to rework things, that added to the budget. So, of course, it went over budget. Now, if you want to know just how bad did this Disney movie do, I knew that Care Bears movie outperformed Black Cauldron, but I didn't know it was this bad. The Care Bears movie sold more tickets than Black Cauldron on Black Cauldron's opening weekend after the Care Bears movie had been out for months. That's how bad Black Cauldron did. So, okay, what other reasons are there for this movie being horrible? Well, let's get started examining this movie. And I have to say right from the start, I was not a fan of the animation. There are parts where it's better than others, but in the opening scene, I thought, okay, am I watching the Gummy Bears? I think you can see what I mean. I mean, this looks more like an animated TV show, and I mentioned the Gummy Bears before. And if you like the Gummy Bears, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Cool, that's a good show. I used to enjoy it when I was a kid. But I'm saying that movies are supposed to have better animation than a TV level show, and this is TV level, not movie level. So yeah, I kind of had a feeling from the start I wouldn't like this, and I'm not enjoying reviewing it. But with my got some headache meds here to take care of the pain that I'm going to go through watching this. So let's get on with it. I should back up a bit and explain that the Black Cauldron of the title refers to a cursed object. You see, there was this king who was so evil that even the gods feared him, and no prison could hold him, so what did they do? They dumped him into a vat of molten iron, which is now shaped into the cauldron. And whoever possesses the cauldron can dump dead bodies in there and bring them back as basically zombies and control them as an army and rule the world. Now, you would think that the evil king would be kind of a focus of the story, but no, the Horned King is, who's a completely different character. Now, right away, the books and the movies differ because at the start of the books, the Horned King already had his army of the undead. So, yeah, right away, you can see what I mean about there's no point in comparing the plots. They're two different stories. So, anyway, we meet our I protagonist, I guess is the right word. You can't really call him a hero because he's not. It's what he wants to be. But he has no idea of what being a hero really means. In fact, in the books, one of the main events that happens that this movie doesn't include is the main character, Taran, meets people that are true heroes, but he had no idea that they were until after. Like, there's this one guy who's bald, and he finds out that this guy did some major, genuine, heroic things. And he's like, this guy can't be a hero. He's bald. You're telling me he did brave deeds? Like, and the rest of the people around him are like, since when does having hair have anything to do with having courage? So you could see right from the start, Taran's an idiot. Sorry, but he is. And he has these big dreams of going to war, and he's actually afraid of the war going on without him.
Oh, Dorban, I was just thinking, what if the war's over and I never had a chance to fight? And a good thing, too.
To quote Yoda, wars not make one great. Taran has these ideas of being a knight in shining armor and all the trappings and trimmings that involves, but he doesn't get what war is. And by the way, it's never really explained what war is going on right now. You would think it would be against the Horned King, but it's never specifically said. And at this point, the Horned King doesn't have his army, so I'm thinking probably not actually the Horned King at this point. Like I said, the books and the movie are so different it doesn't even pay to compare them. But in the books, the Horned King already has his undead army. Here, he doesn't yet. So, I mean, I kind of like a little more info on just what war is being fought. You know, is there an enemy out there that's more of a current threat than the Horned King is? I'd like to know this stuff. Granted, it's only, you can only tell so much story in the length of a movie, but a few lines of dialogue could have provided a lot of information, or maybe a little more of an introduction at the beginning when they're telling the story of the Cauldron. They could have added in, like, the land of Prydain is now fallen under war against this group. They could have filled in the gaps. So, anyway, back to Taran. I cannot stand this character. Not only is he constantly whining about how he just doesn't have a chance to be a hero, he's also a bully to the farm animals.
There you are. His Majesty, the Horned King. So, we meet at last. Ha! Even the Horned King.
Because being a hero involves rattling a goat's brains. Yeah, very heroic, Taran. Although, I do love how Karma has something to say about this.
Shakes with fear. See, Hen? Everybody runs from the famous Taran of Cairngorm.
Seriously, I count the goat as more of a hero than Taran. Well, during the play scuffles, Henwin, who is the pig that Tyron is responsible for taking care of, gets dirty, and Tyron's caretaker Dalbin. But another good point, we never really established how are Tyron and Dalbin connected. Are they, uncle and nephew, adopted? What's going on here? It's established in the books, yes. I mean, yeah, I said you can't compare the plots, I know. But there is info in the books that would have been nice to have had, whether or not it's part of the plot or just, details about the character. It would have been kind of nice to know. Well, anyway, Dobbin tells Tyron, okay, go give Henwin a bath. And Henwin's actually enjoying the bath, but then she apparently sees a vision, which doesn't quite match up with what we're about to learn in a few seconds, but apparently she gets a vision.
Hey, come on, Hen. I haven't finished scrubbing your back. Hen, what is the matter? Calm down, Hen.
Dobbin comes out of the house to find out what's going on here, and when he realizes what's happening, he tells Tyron to bring Henwood inside, and he's going to show him just why taking care of Henwin is so important. It turns out Henwin can show visions. Now, that's where I'm a little unclear, and I wish we had more info. Does she have the visions herself? Is she only capable of showing others visions? Is she the one seeing, or is she like some magic mirror that lets you, see what's going on through it? It doesn't really say just what specifically is going on here. Again, could have included a little more info. Well, we see what Henwin is seeing, which is a vision of the Horn King, and tell me this isn't a Fantasia ripoff.
The Horned King.
No, that's not the Horn King. That's Night on Bald Mountain from Fantasia. You can't deny that. I mean, okay, Disney's copied their own animation before, but this is just a little too obvious that that's what they did. Well, through the vision, Dalbin figures out that the Horn King knows about Henwin's ability to see things. And yet Dalbin's the only one who knows. So, how did the Horn King find out? We don't know. This movie sucks at giving info that's important to the plot. There's so many there's side stories that should be woven in here, so many subplots. That's really what this movie is missing is subplots. You need those. Yeah, I know it's a simplified kids movie, but you look at any other movie, you got some kind of subplot going on. It doesn't have to be a lot, it doesn't have to be heavy, but in this case, the situation calls for it. There's too much information that we don't know. Would it change the plot if we did know? No, but it would make the story richer if we did. So, Dobbin sends Tammin off with Henwin to a cottage at the end of the Forbidden Forest. We don't know why he's being sent there. Apparently, that's safer than a house in the center of the village. I don't know why it's safer. The Forbidden Forest kind of makes it sound like it would not be safer. But for some reason, Dalbin thinks that's the best place to go, and for some reason, he's going to join him there later rather than going with him now. Again, we don't know why. But en route, Taran again gets visions of himself as this great heroic person, and he daydreams. And it takes him all of 5 seconds to lose track of Henwin.
But without the help of my pig Henwin here, Henwin? Where are you? Henwin?
These are only extra strength. Not gonna be a help. I'm gonna need something stronger than that by the time I'm done dealing with this character. And, this is just. Imagine if in Lord of the Rings, Frodo had let the ring roll down a hill while he was daydreaming, and it ended up right in Gollum's hands. That's pretty much what Taran just did. He was told how important it was that the Horn King did not find Henwin, because if he does, he's going to find out where the Black Cauldron is and bring back an army of the undead that's going to take over the world. It couldn't have been any clearer how important it is to not let him get Henwin. By the way, speaking of Lord of the Rings, while Taran is looking for Henwin, he's about to meet what the result would be if Gollum got a little too friendly with an old English sheepdog.
Oh, great prince. Give poor starving Goody munchings and crunchings. Nice apple.
The little furry guy is Gertie, and if he would have called that apple his precious, I would have quit. There would have been no way I could have finished watching this movie with a straight face. Gertie is, he gets a lot of hate, but honestly, by the end of the movie, you get to like him, or at least I did. I can't say that, he's the greatest character ever, but he does have a sweet side. And he does serve as an interesting foil to Taran. By which I mean they're opposites. They're kind of, they mirror each other in a way that, from a writing standpoint, I see Gergi as reflecting just what's wrong with Taran and the way they counter each other. I'll get into that more towards the end. But I can basically, for now, I'm going to say I continue to hate Taran through this whole movie, and yeah, I do get to like Gergi. Well, Taran explains he's looking for Henwin, and I gotta, you know, laugh at the way Gergi, lets on that he clearly has seen Henwin, but then claims not to.
Big Snap. Yes, yes. Ponytail. That's her, that's Henwin. Nope. Goody not see Piggy.
Gergi does do a pretty good job of being comic relief in this movie. But he also shows a heart. Eventually, he does tell Taran, okay, you want to go this way to find your pig. And they end up actually just coming to Henwin in time to seeing one of the Horn King's dragons carry her off. The dragons head in the direction of the Horn King's castle, and Gergi ran off at the first sign of the dragons, but he did come back to be a friend to Taran, and you do see a sweet side to the little guy.
What are you doing here? Gertie come back to be your friend.
Well, it doesn't take Taran long at all once he's in the castle to get himself captured by the Horn King. I don't think anyone's surprised by that. Well, Taran, here's your big chance. You were going to be a big hero. You weren't afraid of the Horn King. Let's see how brave you are against him.
I presume, my boy, you are the keeper of this oracular pig.
Yes, sir.
I've not seen any swords drawn there, and I even heard him address the Horn King as Sir. I think Taran's finding out his idea of being a hero is not as easy as what he thought. By the way, the Horn King is voiced by John Hurt, who's a very fine actor, and honestly, I don't know what he's doing in this movie. If you're a fan of Doctor Who, he is the War Doctor. If you're a fan of Merlin, he's the voice of the Great Dragon Kilgara. So, he's been in quite a few other things. Very fine actor, but he can't carry this movie on his own. Well, Taran does initially refuse to use Henwin's powers to show where the Black Cauldron is, until the Horn King threatens Henwin, which, that does happen a lot to heroes in other stories. They'll give in to the villain because they don't want someone they care about hurt. I can give that a pass. And before Henwin actually lets on just where the Black Cauldron is, Tyron does end up throwing the water in the Horn King's face, so I give him credit for that one. Wow, that looked like the water did a lot more than just annoy the Horn King. That actually hurt him. So I'm thinking we have a potential weapon against the Horned King, right? I mean, is he weak against water? Can we use this? Nah, we're never going to mention that again. Why would we? Okay, so moving on. Tyron does manage to get Henwin out of the castle, although he himself is captured, and this is where he meets Princess Elanwi, who is one of the only things that I like in this movie.
I'm Princess Alonwi. Are you a lord or a warrior?
No. I'm an assistant pig keeper.
Oh, what a pity.
I gotta love the way she dishes him right away. Now, I gotta say, I do not like the voice acting of any of the characters in here. I'm Princess Elanwi. You know, I'm Princess Elanwi. There's a more realistic way to say it. And that's something that's majorly wrong with this movie is the feelings that all the voice actors give. They don't seem like they're actually these characters. They sound more like they're playing at playing these characters, if that makes sense. None of the feeling is genuine. I mean, I've seen kids, play acting together and they sound more realistic than this cast does. Just put feeling into it, make it real. Nah, that's too much to ask. Although, Elanwi is the first Disney princess to actually have her own personality. She's not waiting around for some prince or knight or whatever to come rescue her. No, she's getting herself out of there, and Tyron can come along if he wants. I love that about her.
Oh, well, if you want to come with me, you may.
Can I?
But yes, I said you could.
As they go through the castle trying to escape, they come across where a famous king is buried. Never really says what he's famous for, just that he probably used to own the castle that the Horn King's in now. Tyron decides might as well take the sword with him, and I love Elanwi's reaction to his grave robbing.
Well, he's not going to use it.
Continuing on through the castle, they meet Fluter Flem, who's a traveling bard. He goes around singing songs about great stories, great things people have done. Well, they get him halfway freed before the guards show up and they have to take off.
Make haste! Make haste! I must save myself!
I don't claim to be an expert on being a hero, but I'm pretty sure if you encounter an old guy locked up in a dungeon, you're supposed to free him. No, these two just run off. Okay, let's leave him to fend for himself. He's fine. Actually, he does get free on his own, and he runs after them. Not that they actually look back to check. Well, they wouldn't have made it out at all, except it turns out that the sword that Tyron took, grave robbed, actually has magical powers. Speaking of magical items, the liar had you'll get the pun of that. The lyre that Fluter Flem plays actually snaps a chord whenever he's caught in a lie. Lyre that detects liars, haha, great pun. Well, you would think that a lie detector like that might come in handy later when they face other characters, but again, nah, let's never mention that again. Well, they all managed to escape, and Tyron's congratulating himself on what a great hero he is, and Elanwi rightfully points out he didn't do anything. The sword did all the work. Naturally, he tells her that a girl doesn't know anything about being a hero.
What does a girl know about swords anyway?
Girl? Girl? If it weren't for this girl, you would still be in the Horned King's dungeon.
You tell him, Elanwi. Well, it doesn't take long to patch things up between them, and that's just in time for Gurgi to come back. You know, so far I gotta say I haven't seen that much need for comic relief. But Gurgi does do a good job of getting a laugh. And I do have to laugh at his reaction to being called out on stealing Fluter's hat.
Too big anyway.
Well, Gurgi knows how to find Henwin. He's found her tracks. These tracks actually lead them to the kingdom of the fairies. Now, keep in mind, this is the same studio that drew Tinkerbell, that drew the Blue Fairy and Pinocchio. Now they're drawing this.
Bet they wake up soon. You better tell King Idleway.
Like I said, this is Saturday morning cartoon level animation, not the kind of thing you expect from Disney. You know, this is not the art that we're used to. Well, the fairies do have some useful information. They know where to find the Black Cauldron so it can be destroyed, so the Horned King can never use it.
It's safely hidden in Morva. Morva? At least I think it is.
He thinks it is. Okay, a magical item that's going to determine the fate of the world might be in a safe place. We don't know. Good chance it is. Why not go looking for it? So, the fairies take Henwin to safety. Meanwhile, the rest of the group goes looking for the Black Cauldron, and they encounter a trio of witches. These witches can turn people into frogs, that's way overdone, come on. And one of these witches has a thing for Fluter Flem.
Where is he? Where'd he go?
I'll take things I never wanted to see in a Disney movie for 1,000, Alex. Yeah, I know Disney does adult jokes and they sneak them in, but being turned into a frog trapped between a pair of boobs, that's just gross. Okay, so this protagonist, I still hesitate to use the word heroes. They make a deal with the witches that they will give them the magic sword in exchange for the Black Cauldron. Now, the witches agree to this because they know there's nothing the heroes, protagonist, I'll just go with heroes, I guess, because it's easier. There's nothing they're going to be able to use the Black Cauldron for.
The Black Cauldron can never be destroyed. Only its evil powers can be stopped.
Well, the powers can be stopped, that's good. But the only way to stop them is not so good.
Then there is a way. But how? A living being must climb into it of his own free will.
So if they're going to stop the Horned King, someone has to die. Now, this might be an interesting point since Fluter's supposed to be a bard, he's a musician, he's a storyteller, to come up with some kind of song to bolster their spirits that somehow they'll find another way, something uplifting. That's one of the things that this movie is missing too, is there are no songs. None. There's background music, but there are no songs, which is really weird considering one of the characters is a singer. That doesn't make sense. And like I said, this movie really lacks feeling, and songs would add a lot to that. Granted, it's supposed to be dark. I get that. But they already have more than enough comic relief. And it would be easy enough for the songs to actually make the right parts feel darker, sadder. If you're going to feel something, in a movie. If you're making a movie and you want the audience to feel it, make them feel it. And music would have been great for that. And speaking of Fluter, he doesn't really move the plot along. I don't dislike him as a character per se, but the time spent showing him clowning around and being comic relief, we already have more than enough of that with Gurgi. The movie hasn't been that dark so far where we actually need the comic relief. And I feel like the time spent on him could have been better used to flesh out some of the other characters. Ilanwi's a princess. We never hear about what kingdom she's from. Are they missing her? Are the king and queen looking for her? Are they still alive? How does she fit into this picture? Is she set to rule someday? We don't know a whole lot about her. That might have been interesting to see that developed on a little bit more. There's a whole lot of plot development and character development that could have happened. Music could have helped with that too. Have Ilanwe sing a song about, her homeland and how she was captured, how she misses it there. Granted, she's always fighting back, she's got spirit, but it might have been nice to see a softer, more broken side from her. Make her character three dimensional. Well, in any case, while they're debating on how they're going to find a way to not have someone die in order to stop the Cauldron's magic, they all get caught, except for Gurgi, who ran off. The Horn King has the Cauldron, and he brings back his army of the undead.
Centuries pass. Never has anyone created an army like this.
If you're wondering why the animation looks a little weird here, it's because this was supposed to originally be 3D, at least in part, to make the undead army of the Cauldron Born even more scary. Apparently, audiences deemed it too scary, so they said, okay, we're not going to go that route. Now, Black Cauldron is supposedly the darkest movie Disney ever made, but honestly, I've seen scarier from Disney. And now, fear is a very personal thing. I mean, maybe you do think this is the scariest thing Disney ever made, and, if that's your view, you're not wrong. Different things scare different people. But I think about, for example, the scene where the boys transform into donkeys in Pinocchio, the transformation of the evil queen in Snow White, the headless horseman chasing Ichabod Crane in Sleepy Hollow. There are scarier, darker Disney scenes, I think. And they were done before this, so, it's not like Disney hadn't done something dark before. They're just. It's like when they made this movie, they said, let's go dark. And then they were afraid to actually commit to that. If you're going to go dark, do it. Make the audience feel that fear, make them feel that sorrow, make them live the story, make them experience it. I know that's not what you expect from Disney, but market it in a way where people know what they're going to be getting ahead of time. Let the audience know this isn't your typical Disney movie, it's going to be scary, and then make it scary. Well, speaking of. I was going to say, before I get onward with the next scene, I mentioned the animation, that it looked different here because it was originally supposed to be 3D. I did comment on the animation being poor quality before. One thing I noticed when we're in the castle, the animation is actually way better on the background. Now, Great Mouse Detective is typically thought of as the first Disney movie to use CGI. Not true. Actually, The Black Cauldron has that distinction for the castle scenes for some special effects. I'd rather they. I mean, the backgrounds look good enough otherwise. I personally would have rather they spent more time on getting the characters a little more elaborate design, but that's just me, I guess. My opinion. And as a reviewer, everybody has their opinion, but that's mine. So, Gurgi, who managed to run off before the rest of them were captured, he's able to free them, or at least frees Taran, and goes on continuing to free the others, while Taran goes about to sacrifice himself to the Black Cauldron to stop everything. Gurgi doesn't let that happen, and we find out that Gurgi is actually a very brave little character.
No, Googie not let his friend die. Taran has many friends. Googie has no friends.
Gurgi, no! Don't jump! Wait! No! No!
Okay, I've seen enough Disney movies to know Gurgi's not gonna stay dead. Even if you haven't seen this, I'm pretty sure you're gonna be able to figure that out. But I still feel like this could have had more emotional weight. Yeah, it's sad, but they could have had a little more build up. I don't know, slow the scene down a little bit. Maybe where we see Gurgi struggling with that decision a few moments, zoom in on him, show the look in his eyes while he's debating himself, knowing what he has to do. To me, I don't know, just my viewpoint that it would have given a little more emotion to this moment had it been slowed down just a little. And yeah, Taran tries to stop him from jumping in, but I don't really get the feeling he tried all that hard. It doesn't look like he's really moving fast to try to stop him, and that's in the animation as well as the voice acting, so that he's trying, make him move at a realistic pace to try to stop him. If somebody I care about is going to jump to their death, I'm not gonna just, said, Gurgi, don't. I'm gonna be moving to try to stop that. It would have made the scene a lot better to show that struggle. I was thinking of in Endgame where the Black Widow's going to sacrifice herself. If you've seen Endgame, you know the struggle before that. I feel like that's what we should have had, and this is what we got.
Stop! Don't!
Taran does feel bad that Gurgi sacrificed himself and tells the others to go ahead and he's going to stick around because maybe there's a chance for Gurgi. Well, meanwhile, we see all of the Cauldron born army start to die. The Horn King comes back to see what's going on, and this gives us one of the actually creepy parts of the movie where we see the Horn King actually sucked into the cauldron himself. I mentioned we have comic relief from Gurgi. I haven't yet talked about Creeper. He's the henchman of the Horn King, and we've seen him get strangled and basically beaten up throughout this whole thing. And we do get comedy from him, especially when he sees that his master is gone. I love his reaction, how he's sad at first, but then he realizes, hey, this is a good thing.
Horrible! Oh, son! He's gone! He's gone!
I will give some kudos for that. I mean, it's kind of cool to see one of the evil henchmen actually turn out well for once. Well, they go back to the witches and they say, okay, we'll give you back the cauldron, and the witches are going to give back the sword. And we finally see some character development from Taran.
I'm not a warrior. I'm a pig boy. What would I do with a sword?
Not that someone with a dream should give up on their dream. Not in any case, that's what I'm not saying that, but it is nice to see some humility in him finally. Saying, oh, I'm not born to be the greatest hero ever. In the books, it does take 5 whole books to get some character development. I mean, not that there's no character development throughout the stories, but it takes that long for him to reach the potential that he's supposed to have. Now, Disney remakes a lot of movies these days, and really, if you're going to remake something, take something that needs remaking. I could honestly see this if they made it into a TV series, like, one that debuts on Disney Plus. They really could do this right. Flesh out your characters, show their development, give the backstory, give us the information we need. There's potential here for a really great story, but this movie just does not live up to it. Well, Gurgi made the sacrifice earlier, and now we see that Taran's willing to make the sacrifice of the sword in exchange for bringing Gurgi back. We get a Now we finally get some real feeling here where it looks like the witches tried but weren't successful. And this is a genuinely sad moment until it turns happy. And I think there's more feeling in this moment than there was when Gurgi actually jumped in.
Lynchings and crunchings in here somewhere.
So they all go home and all presumably live happily ever after. Classic Disney ending. So, does this movie have its good points? I mean, like I said, there's potential there. I just think that if this was a good idea for a story that was horribly, horribly done. And it could be done right. Disney, if you're making remakes, like I said, try remaking the movies that suck. Doesn't that make more sense than remaking the ones that are already classics? If you haven't seen this and you're curious to watch it, I mean, you may enjoy it. Everyone's opinion is different. As for me, I have no real desire to ever watch it again. Well, next time I'm going to be talking about another episode of Once Upon a Time. I only have about 100 episodes of that to go. I will see you in that review, and until next time, remember the magic.